Okay, so today we are going to learn a little bit about fractions. Well, what are fractions? Well, fractions are a part of a whole or a group. This is very important for you to know that it can be part of a whole or a group. Part of a whole or a group. Why is this important? Well, sometimes it's not always a picture of a pie or a pizza. It's always looking like this. Sometimes it can be a group such as this. I could have smiley faces, sad faces, smiley face, sad face. And I could get a fraction from this group, but I could also get a fraction from this whole right here. But what's very important for us to know about fraction? Well, a fraction must have two numbers. And what are they? The numerator and the denominator. And notice what I did right here. I placed the numerator on top of the denominator. Why? Because this is exactly what it looks like. In a fraction, you have two numbers, one on top of the other. And usually, the numerator tells how many parts out of, and the denominator tells us the whole. Or better yet, it tells us all of the equal parts. All of the equal parts. So, two very important things for us to understand. The numerator, which is the number on top, and the denominator, which is the number on the bottom. And sometimes I tell students, think down and denominator. Those two numbers, so the denominator will be down. So let's go into some examples of fraction. But as I said, a fraction is a part of a whole or a group. So here's one example. We've seen fractions looking like this. You have a brownie, a chocolate brownie. Yummy. A chocolate brownie. And now the chocolate brownie has been divided into 4 equal parts. This has 4 equal parts. Why is it considered to have 4 equal parts? Well, there are 4 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are all equal. They are all equal. But this 4 also represents the denominator. So one thing you could always pay attention to is your denominator. The first thing you'd want to find when trying to figure out your fraction or trying to represent your fraction is find your denominator first. And finding your denominator just requires you to count everything that is in front of you, the whole. So for this fraction, definitely the denominator is going to be 4. Now, the numerator is going to be whatever is being asked of. Sometimes you might be asked to find what's the shaded part. What does the shaded part represent? And for this one, the shaded part would represent 1/4. 1/4. What does this mean? Well, 1 out of the 4 has been shaded. Now, this is why this is the numerator, and this is the denominator. Because the numerator is telling us how many parts out of the whole has been shaded. Now, sometimes you may be asked, well, what is the fraction of the unshaded? And let me make sure I write this. This is for the shaded. You might be asked, well, what is the fraction for the unshaded? And the same thing would relate. Well, find the denominator first. The denominator is still 4 because it's still 4 things here, 4 equal parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Still 4 equal parts. So, bam, we have our denominator. Now, what do we have for our numerator? For the unshaded. Unshaded. Don't get tricked. Unshaded. Well, what's not shaded? That's what on means. 1, 2, 3. So our 3 would go here. So this is 3/4. 3 is the numerator. which also, as I've said, it represents the number of parts out of the whole, which is the denominator. Let's try another example. Sometimes our fractions may look like irregular shapes, and that's fine. And that is fine. What would we do here? And I know my shape is just a little bit not the same size here, and that was just my fault right here. But if I were to ask, well, what is the number for equal parts? Well, the denominator, which is the same thing. Well, we would count first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 equal parts, and our denominator is also 10. So if asked, well, what fraction is shaded? The first thing we do is put our denominator. The denominator stands for the whole. Everything, don't forget that. Everything goes here. Everything goes here. Everything goes here. So we count everything, but we've already done that, but nothing will change. We are still going to count it once more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do you notice that I still counted even the ones that were shaded because it is still a part of everything and it belongs right here. Now what goes on top for what's shaded? Well, how many were actually shaded? 1, 2. So this is 2/10. 2/10 represents what has been shaded, and we've done fractions. That's what this is all about. As I've said, fractions are a part of a whole or a group. Part of a whole or a group. This is part of the whole. This is 1 out of the whole. This is 3 out of the whole. 3, which represents 1, 2, 3. And let's look at this last one. We have 2 out of 10. Which is 2 out of the whole, and the whole is 10. Let's do one or a few more examples as it relates to fractions of a group this time though. So this time I'm going to write a few letters. I may be asked, or you may be asked, yes, you may be asked, to find the fraction for the letters represented here. But you may be asked specifically for certain letters. Now, what did we say? Well, a fraction has a numerator and a denominator. If you said denominator, kiss your brain. Fraction has a numerator and a denominator. It needs two numbers. Numerator on top, denominator on the bottom. And the easiest part to find is always the denominator. And how do we find the denominator, or how many equal parts, or how many are in the entire group? By counting everything all at once. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we put our 8 right there. So this is our denominator. This is how many equal parts we have. This is our total, or the whole. Now you can be asked any questions as it relates to the numbers. You might be asked, well, what fraction represents A? How would we figure that out? Well, you would count how many A's you have out of the group. 1, 2, 3. So A would be 3/8. Why is it 3/8? Because there are 3 A's, 1, 2, 3, out of the entire group of letters. Do you see the difference? This is why a fraction can be a part of a group of things. So we have A. What if we were asked to find the fraction that represents B? Once again, we find our denominator. Did the denominator change? No, but let's confirm it. Denominator, you count everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 belongs here. And what do we do to find the numerator for b? How many parts out of 8 does b account for? Well, let's look. 1, 2. 2 eighths. 1, 2. 2 out of the 8. 2 letters out of the 8 in all are actually B. And let's look at the last one. We have the letter C. The denominator, if you said 8, you're correct. Why is it 8? Because there are 8 letters in total. Nothing has changed. Still 8 letters. How do we figure out what number goes on top? What's our numerator? Well, we count the letters and we look for C. 1, 2. Let me check again. 1, 2. And this is also 2 eighths. And there we have it. Talking about fractions. 2 things you need to come from this lesson or get from this lesson is that a fraction has 2 numbers. It has a numerator and a denominator. The denominator is the whole or equal parts. All the equal parts, all equal parts. And the numerator is how many out of, how many parts out of the whole. And which one is the easiest for us to find? The denominator. The denominator. Why? Because you can tell the denominator by counting everything in the group. Everything in the group. I am going to show one last picture, and in the comments, I want you to tell me what is the denominator for this fraction. What would go here? What's the denominator? What is the denominator? We know that the numerator would be 2, but what is the denominator? Answer that question, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks again for watching.